So, why do we learn or why do we acquire knowledge? I had an interesting conversation the other day. A good friend was talking about individuals who seem to only learn things because their primary purpose is to show up at parties and talk, to impress people or to show off. And I've certainly had a lot of people in my life for whom that was true. I've spent a good portion of my professional career in academia. And of course, I spent a lot of time in academia preparing for my academic career. And it does seem like there was an abundance of individuals who their primary purpose was to acquire knowledge so that they could be impressive in a moment. And the conversation with my friend made me think. He's a much more practical individual, and his primary thoughts behind why we learn or why we acquire knowledge is to make our lives better. And that is primarily through being able to do additional things. That is, you can take the knowledge or information that you've acquired and apply it to a scenario so it makes your life somehow better. And of course, there's an argument there that the individual who simply wants to impress others, they are acquiring knowledge for that purpose to make their lives better because their objective, once again, is to make an impression on others. There's something in their internal needs that makes them desire the respect or admiration or reverence that others can give them. That is, they want attention. My takeaway from the conversation was that there are many reasons that people learn or acquire knowledge. There are types of people who their sole purpose is to acquire knowledge to apply to a given task or function. So any learning or knowledge that they don't deem as being applicable to tasks or functions in their lives, they devalue it or don't have any respect for it. I had a similar conversation with another friend, actually a family member, and that individual's in academia as well, but on the science side, the STEM side of things. And he seems to have very little desire for the attention or admiration of others. He simply has a curious nature and uses a very scientific approach to understanding new things. And he tends to use that knowledge for his own edification, just to simply understand how things work or why things happen. And I began to think about this, and I suppose that in a way, both of these types of individuals are acquiring knowledge again to try to make their life better based upon what they perceive as being better. The curious individual wants to scratch the itch of not knowing something, so they want to understand it, where another person uses it primarily as a way to gain their internal need of recognition. Other people, like my friend who sees knowledge as a means to an end, obviously gets fulfillment from the completion of tasks or being able to do something successfully. So it somehow makes his life better or fulfills him to have that dopamine hit or that sense of accomplishment that comes from a finished task or activity. And doing it himself means more to him than simply doing something else and allowing someone who, say, specializes in that or does that for a living to pay them or otherwise get them to do that thing for them. He's more of a DIY type person. And we all know there are many DIY type people in the world. And many of these individuals, some would say, are trying to save money, but oftentimes that's really not their driving force. They do something for themselves based upon their sense of fulfillment that they receive from doing that thing. So I suppose the takeaway here is that the reason that we learn or acquire knowledge is personal in nature. It will vary based upon your internal needs or wants. So it's a psychological preference. Now, this reality does create some inconsistencies in the higher education system. That is how individuals are taught or how information is presented to them and how they are assessed in their learning or understanding of that information, which begs a deeper question. Should education be more personalized in terms of what individuals receive from the experience or what they expect to receive from the experience, and how institutions should present that information and how they assess whether that information that was presented had its intended effect on the recipient, on the individual student learner? So if you have any thoughts yourself on this topic, please jump down in the comments, go over to thebusinessprofessor.com and jump into the forums because we'd love to hear your opinion. But regardless, I hope to see you around the platform soon, Until then, take care.